Thanks to each of you for allowing us to come into your home today and listen to your Springfield stories. So the first thing I'd like to do is just ask each of you to introduce yourself. We'll just go one at a time, introduce yourself, and then we'll get into the stories of what brought you here and more into your Springfield stories.
I'm Lloyd Downing. What else? This is 1921 Laurel Street. We moved from Arlington, an area called Charter Point, which is a riverfront community in the Arlington area out past JU.
Okay, and originally where are you from?
I'm from Florida.
From Florida, okay.
And I'm Fran Downing, and I moved with him to Clearwater from Mississippi, where I'm from. And we've been in Florida since 1982 and in Springfield since 2001.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Susan Noonan. We live at 1334 Hubbard Street, and we moved to Florida, South Florida, in 1988, but we've been in Springfield since 2002.
All right.
And I'm Frank Noonan, also at 1334 Hubbard Street. And this is our third house in Springfield.
Okay. All right. Let's take a step back and talk about what brought you to the Springfield area initially.
Well, for us, we came to the holiday home tour with Lloyd's daughter, who is a nurse and was working at Shands at the time, and Shands was giving some incentives for people to buy in Springfield. So we came over to look for a home for her, and I fell in love with the homes, and eventually we bought before she did. She eventually did buy in Springfield, but we bought in 2001, and this house was condemned, so it was quite an undertaking. Actually, we lived on a rental at 6th and Laura for about 18 months while we did this house. And we didn't know them at the time, but they were waiting to get our apartment because they were working on their house at the same time.
And you wouldn't move. They had a fire here, so they couldn't move. They had to stay longer, which meant we had to stay on the south side longer. And we were so disappointed. We didn't know who they were.
They were mad at us.
when we finally met, and got to talking, then it's, oh, you're the one that stayed in the apartment so long. And after that, we just became good friends. Well, let me tell you how we first came to Springfield. Frank was transferred here, so we did not come to Jacksonville by choice.
So we came from.
And so we looked around town, drove around all the time looking for an older neighborhood, nice historic homes with character, and it could not find anything. So we looked in the Sunday paper every week, and one Sunday we saw a picture of a house listed that was in an old-fashioned style. It was a new house, but it was old-fashioned style. So I called to see if we could see the house. And the realtor said, well, I'll give you the address, but I'm not going over there. So that did not deter us. We came, we saw that house and drove around, and we knew then that this was going to be our neighborhood.
And we found a realtor that lived here, was a teacher also, Ingrid Green, and she showed us our first house.
Yeah,
if you want to talk
she
about
lived here, and so she knew a lot about the neighborhood, and she was wonderful.
And that was kind of a funny story because it was a house on West 9th. So we set up an appointment to see the house. It's a bungalow. That's what we just moved from. That's what we thought was in our price range. So we're sitting there for about 10 minutes waiting for the realtor. And about one house down across the street, there was a lady had been sitting out there waiting. Finally, we asked her who she was, and she said, I'm Ingrid Green. And that's okay. Well, we wanted to see this house. She thought she had that house listed across the street, and that's what she thought we wanted to see. So She couldn't get a key to the house we wanted to see. She showed us her listing, and we looked at it. It was big. It was at the top of our price range and needed work. And we just said, thanks for showing us the house. She said, well, wait a minute. There's a house right around the corner that had sold and the deal fell through, and it just came back on the market. You want to see it? So we followed her around to West 4th Street, and as soon as we saw the house, even though it had a hole in the roof and was really deteriorated, we said, that's the house right there. So that's how we got to Springfield.
Talk a little bit about the challenges of taking a house that's in that kind of condition.
Well, the state of the neighborhood made a big difference too, because if there were any tools left in the house or any way to access the house, they were vulnerable. So a lot was lost because of people coming in and stealing. Lloyd put a lawnmower in here and locked the front door and thought it would be okay, and the next day we came back and it was gone. So there were a number of challenges, but we learned as we went, and he has a relative who was a draftsman, and he kind of put together a plan, and we used it as a guide, and then we changed as we went along, and it just kind of evolved. So
We ended up, we had the same contractor.
now that's a story.
And that's how we actually met was, so that's a big challenge, was getting a contractor that was honest and did what they said they were going to do. So
and we didn't find that.
we were at
never
the point our house had been renovated in the 60s, and there was no trim left that was original to the house except the staircase. The contractor said, well, I've got some trim I think you guys would like. You guys come over here and let me show you this other house. So we get over here and met Lloyd, Fran, found out Lloyd did insurance, and we were going to need insurance. So, and then we found out they lived in the house.
Apartment.
And so what became funny later on, but not ha-ha funny, is that this was trim that was milled over at Carolina Lumber, and this contractor had they paid for the trim in our house. He had extra trim. He had extra trim made, and what he did was that trim disappeared and went over to our house.
He stole it.
He sold it to us.
And stole it from us.
So that was just
All
one of the
right.
challenges. I ended up firing that contractor, and we moved in our house. We started renovation in November, and they were supposed to be done. The contractor said, "Well, we'll be done March 31st." And I said, "Yeah, well, let's just put in the contract. Let's put in May 31st, just because it tends to take a little bit longer." So we put 2 months extra in there, and ends up we're in September, and everything that we wanted done was not being done right. It was not good work. So we fired him, and we moved in. We didn't have air conditioning upstairs. We didn't have hot water. So Pat LaMountain, who lived at the corner of 5th and Laura, had been we'd been very involved with SPAR before we moved in. She said, "Well, I'll just leave the key, my mailbox up there. You guys just come take a shower whenever you want to." So we would go down there in the evening. We did this for probably about 2 weeks till we got our gas hooked up, and we'd go past the prostitutes and try to make sure they didn't see us grabbing the key and that kind of stuff like that. And they would the prostitutes hung out on the corner where she lived.
Okay.
And
The best way to describe what this experience was like, if you've ever seen the movie The Money Pit, this was worse.
Yeah.
No, not quite that bad.
Put it to shame.
So one of the things, Frank, you just said, your neighbor that let you come and take a shower in her house. I mean, a lot of neighbors, did you know them really well?
our neighbors were really nice. We lived between Main and Laura on 4th. Most of the properties there were rental. Our next door neighbor, the Durhams, were really nice. And then there was a lady who lived a few houses down, and some of her boys lived on the street. She was related to everybody on the street. But we were the only white people on the street. But everybody was so nice to us. When we were renovating, I was in the backyard, chopping stuff down, and I hear this, pss, pss, pss. Hey, and I come up there we had the chain link fence, and I go up there to him and he goes, "There's a guy sleeping on your porch." And
That was common.
And stuff like
Yeah.
when we went out of town, the first time I went out of town, we still didn't really know everybody that much, and actually Susan went out of town and she drove my vehicle, and Don, our neighbor, thought that I had left her alone there, and he got upset. He said, "If you're going to leave town, you should tell me so I can watch out for you." So I gave him my telephone number when we left, and sure enough, so Lloyd and Fran were getting our mail for us, and we're in Louisiana. I get a call from Don, says, "Hey, there's this older guy with blonde, a lady with blonde hair and a guy with gray hair." And like, yeah, that's okay. So as soon as he found out it was okay, then he went over there and asked them, "Are you going to take their trash cans in for him too?" So we had really good neighbors.
It
that
was such a
watched out
small
for us.
community then that, everybody did help out one another.
Yeah.
We all were like working together to bring this neighborhood back. So it was different than it is now. And there's positives to where we are now, but there were a lot of positives then because we were kind of like pioneers working on a
Yeah.
project. So it was pretty special.
You would have never have guessed that these people would have been such good neighbors, but they were. The lady that lived right across the street was in her living room watching TV one day, and she had an air conditioning unit in the window. And she said it started moving. And she didn't know what was going on. And suddenly somebody takes it out of the window and starts taking off with it. So she called JSO real quick, and they caught him. But that's how brave people were back then.
Yeah. We lived on the south side. I felt a lot safer here than I did on the south side. Despite the things that you heard us talking about, because it's what you see is what you get. Actually, her brother's a police officer, and he gave us what he called his twins. He gave us a pair of 32s, and we were in the house for about over 2 years before we even bought any ammunition for it. And the only reason we did is we had 4 hurricanes come through like back to back that year, and we thought, well, people, will start kind of going crazy. So we said, well, let's go ahead and get some ammunition in case we need it. But we weren't afraid. Even.
Well, Springfield was, it was in a really bad shape. Boarded up houses, drug dealers, prostitutes, just the people on the street didn't care, and there were very few people living over here. It had all cleared out, so the ones that were left didn't care. It was in bad shape. So, and was it 98 or 99 when the city did the auction?
Something
The
like that.
city auctioned houses off, and to bring people in and start getting them to renovate the houses to try to bring this neighborhood back. And that's what began to turn it around. And it's taken a lot of years, but we're getting there now. And Main Street had no businesses except pawn shops and I
Tax
guess
offices.
and clubs with dancers and whatever. It was just nobody really cared that would do anything. Cops didn't come down here. So
The city didn't want anything to do with Springfield.
And there was a woman here. There was a prostitute. It's kind of interesting because she came from a decent family. Her dad was a cop. But as the people started to come in and renovate, she didn't like it because it was messing up her business. So she started burning houses down. And how many houses did Dusty burn?
I don't know,
It
several.
was like one every couple of weeks for a while.
Yeah.
And Louise Despain, who was the SPAR president, she tried to
She
burn
tried
her
to
house.
burn
She
her
was in
house
it. when
down
she-
because Louise was working with everybody trying to bring
And
the
that
neighborhood down.
was the one where she got caught on that, when she did that
Because
house.
it didn't catch fire.
Yeah.
No, she went across the street and burned the one across the street. That one did
Yeah,
catch fire and
yeah.
burn. So they finally got her, and she's in jail now. I guess still in jail. She had a long time to be in jail. So, but it was scary because you just didn't know if you were going to lose your house to this woman. And
But there was such a camaraderie with everybody that was here because you all had the same goal, was to improve. So there was always something going on. We cleaned alleys. When we started out, most of the alleys you could barely walk down them. And Doug Vanderlaan was usually the kind of heading things up, and he was really almost the head of everything that we did back then. We cleaned all the alleys. We painted every bridge going across Hogan's Creek, 13 bridges in Springfield. We did all that, and we did all that in about 2.5 to 3 years.
Doug's
With-
house that he
with-
lives in now was burnt very badly. It was almost a loss when they.
That this woman started the fire?
No, I don't know if she did
I
that,
don't think
but
she
it
did
had
that
burned.
Okay.
And but it didn't burn to the ground, and they were able to come back in and restore it. But
Well, there were not a whole lot of us here
no,
at that time.
we could have a
So-
party of the whole neighborhood in one house.
Yes.
Easily.
So we had to do everything. You know, the group that was here had to do everything. So, you know, we put on the home tours, we cleaned the streets, and we cleaned the alleys. We were constantly, you know, doing things. So way back then, we'd say, well, one of these days, things are gonna pick up and we're gonna have younger people coming in and we're gonna turn everything over to them.
Our kids were, when we moved over here, our son had just started college, and so we had 3 kids, and they would call us and say, we can never get a hold of y'all. You all are never there. Well, we were always doing something. Literally, there was rarely one night during the week that we weren't involved in doing something. And we almost burned ourselves out from it, after doing it for
Well,
6 or 7 years.
Yeah,
But
they had
when
to-
we started seeing, younger people moving in with kids, that was, and a lot of that was SRG gets a lot of credit for coming in with the new houses and the way
infills.
Yeah.
that really helped a lot. But that made such a big difference.
What time frame was that, do you think?
2000.
Probably 2000.
Maybe.
Yeah.
6 or 7.
They started in 2003. They were kind of getting going, but it really peaked probably in about 2005.
Actually, we moved into this house in May of 2003, and were doing a house next to our rental then. So they must have started about 2002 or 3.
And so families started moving in.
When we
Because-
moved here, there were no children in the neighborhood. I knew of one at that time, and then found out there were a couple more. But and if we had had children at home, we wouldn't have moved.
No.
Our
And
kids,
if you can imagine how many SRG houses and new houses we have now, and imagine that it was just lots,
Empty lots.
how it would have looked here then.
Either
It
that
was
or boarded up
our
houses.
boarded up houses that were falling down and had to be
But what
demoed.
SRG did was they didn't just build a house here or there. They said, what's the worst spot in Springfield? And it was on Market. So between 3rd and 4th, that was the worst spot. That's where they started at, and then one other area. And
And
so,
on Silver, they have that strip of houses they did over there.
yeah, and so what was kind of interesting is, again, Doug, so I think it was 2000, I'm pretty sure it was 2004 when he organized carolers for Christmas. So we started on the west side and we worked our way over on the east side, and the east side was rough then. The west side was further along. And so that was, even for us, it's like, wow, we're going to go on the east side. And we're going around. When we got to the store at 3rd and Market,
Mhm.
that store was notorious for being people just hanging out there. It was bad news, and we went in there and we sung carols to them, and it was just like a switch flip. The guy says, "You know what, you guys, take anything you want, get you something to drink or anything like that." And from that point on, they were the best neighbors. They they started doing their business differently, and they really cleaned the store up. But up to that point, that was not a good place to go. And so that was just something as simple as doing Christmas carols. You know?
What do you think, before we start moving more into the future, what do you think it was about that kind of core group of people who moved in or were here in the early days when it wasn't the best neighborhood or community to live in because of some of the things you've been talking about?
For me, what I think is just by the way it worked out, it was, when you don't have a lot, it's like we were accepting of anybody. We weren't judgmental. It was diversified. It had nothing. We had the glued L's together. And then a little bit later on with the SRG houses coming in, then we started actually getting kind of worried, because now you had people coming in. At first, they didn't seem to have appreciation for the history of the neighborhood. And there was a little bit of a headbutting contest for a while, but then a couple things happened that galvanized even the newer people coming in, and our concerns with the neighborhood was not going to go the direction we wanted to. It ended up it made it better than what it was, because it became even more diversified. And so I think that's the key to our neighborhood, is that we have more in common than we have differences, and that's people are, I think, they're less judgmental or more accepting of people who are different from themselves.
I was here in 1960. I had an office on Main Street, and my first bank account in Florida when I came out of the service was across the street at the Springfield Atlantic Bank.
It was a time before it had gone really down. I guess it was sort of turning down, but hadn't gone down yet.
But these houses were all still in pretty good shape then, and had, affluent people living in them.
So they weren't the boarding houses
Right.
and those kinds of things. That core group of people, do you think most of them really believed in the historic homes, and that's what
Yes.
kept them?
No,
Definitely.
we were crazy.
And that too.
Yeah.
Had to be a little crazy, but it's hard to explain it. As crazy as some of the things we experienced, we'd get together and we'd talk about it, and we'd laugh about some of it. We had stories to tell one another, and it was really a
And
good, fun
the rest
time.
of the group had
Same
similar
stories, and so it was.
We had hurricane parties and so forth.
It was 2004 when where we had 6 weeks in a row. We had a hurricane each weekend, so there wasn't a lot around at that time. So we decided, Susan and I said, let's go drive north and let's see if we can find a place to eat. So we went to
Joseph's.
Mm-hmm.
So we got up there to Joseph's, and I think we went in, and it was no time before. I don't remember if you guys showed up there, but
We all planned on it, I think.
well, the first time it was by accident.
Oh, was it?
So,
Okay. I don't remember.
what's Bud's wife?
Don.
Bud and Donna Glassner showed up there, and then I think Lloyd and Fran showed up. And I don't know if it was Lana and Paul or somebody, but it's like all of a sudden there's 4 couples from Springfield here. So that we had a good time, and so we said, we should do this again next week. Well, so what we ended up doing is we started a group where we would go eat together on the weekend, and we would go all over the place and try out new places, and
And we still go out
Yeah.
on weekends.
We had
Well, it didn't matter what was going on. We were all involved in everything.
there was an issue going on. I believe it had to do with the Jewish Center, right? When and River Region was looking at being basically granted the Jewish Center, and so that was one that galvanized the whole neighborhood. So we all got our spar shirts, and we went to the city council meeting. It was actually not the city council's, yeah, it was the city council meeting. We went there and we sat in the back. We all had our green spar shirts on, and we sat there waiting for our time to come. Well, they had gotten wind of it, and they had police officers stationed at every door. They were apparently scared that we were going to do something. So when it came time for that issue to come up, and they spoke about the issue, we all stood up, and it went dead quiet. You could hear a pin drop. When everybody stood up, you could hear the noise of everybody standing up, and we all started walking down, and the police officers all started moving out. And long story short, it only took about 5 minutes. You turned our cards in who wanted to speak, and there were so many people that wanted to speak. They asked us, can you just please maybe have a few people talk, because they would have been out there, to way early in the morning. So that was the first thing. It was very powerful to show, because we're all,
Unified.
and it's
Yeah.
like we're not going to be dumped on anymore, and this is it. We've had it, and that was pretty powerful moment.
And we've all of us have gotten together and attended the council and other meetings
Yeah.
for these craft breweries to approve them and so forth.
It's
That
been
was not
a
easy.
fight. There's been so much over here from way back when it's been a fight that we've had to all
We fought for
together
what we've
and
got.
fight to try to bring this neighborhood
Yeah.
back. So
So now we're going to try to move somewhere else.
Yeah, 2 doors down.
We like,
yeah, 2 doors down.
yeah, what was the sheriff? We're going to try to move somewhere else. Now we cleaned up this area.
So you talk about it being a fight, you talked early days, and now you're referencing today with the new businesses on town, the breweries. It's still being a fight. Is the fight different now, do you think?
I think with now with the social media, that's a really effective tool to get people out more quickly now than back then. It was
Word of mouth.
word of mouth and that kind of stuff.
Emails, I guess.
I mean, we didn't have the social media like the SIA had the Orange Blossom newsletter, and that went out to everybody. We have volunteers. We all
Had
went
to
out
put them
and
around in
Pass-
mailboxes.
pass
and
them out.
a lot of people look forward to to getting them. So that was a good thing. But now I think there's other than the building housing, most of the stuff it's been less of a confrontational type situations, just because you had to be more aggressive because we weren't being taken seriously. It's like, well, you're just a little tiny piece of, and we really
Basically, Springfield had been forgotten because, and it had just gone down, and it really didn't matter to people downtown, and that made decisions about what happens, and
some of the things that helped were when you started getting people that were in the local government and different people moving into the neighborhood, a lot of professionals moving in, then that sort of changed the tide. There was a point where we get out of 50 new people coming in, 20 of them were attorneys, and when you started getting more of that, then you started getting more of, you already had the people getting out and willing to put the work in, and now you had the other part of it to kind of round it out, and how you can deliver the message that you want.
I think one of the real things about Springfield and the development of Springfield, and I said it a long time ago, pricing has a lot to do with it. But the pricing of these houses and these properties have gotten so you could buy one of those old houses for $5,000 back when we first moved over here, and now it's going to cost $70,000.
and people would be buying them for
80,000.
profit and just put nothing into them, just rent them out of the
So-
rooms, and then they would just be deteriorating, and they were just used for profit.
And the nonprofits were able to get properties given to them over here, almost given to them. So they were able to locate over here and run their businesses versus, Arlington or wherever else because of the pricing. So maybe that's all changed
It
now.
was. We had a
Made a
community
big
spirit, and that was pretty
Yeah.
special back then.
Before we actually moved in over here, there was a get together, kind of picnic, cook hamburgers and hot dogs in the band building, the band at Clutho Park. And basically, the group of us that were here all fit in the bandstand.
Yeah.
But it was so nice, and we were so welcomed. It was wonderful.
Welcomed by whom?
The people that were already here doing renovations.
Okay.
Spar existed, and in fact, it was in the church on Silver, the Lutheran church, in their community hall. That's where they had the Spar meetings. And we came over when we were still living in Arlington and attended one of them, and we just were so impressed about how everybody was so friendly.
Yeah, yeah.
In fact,
And,
you mentioned earlier Richard and Joyce Wright. So we were renovating our house on West Fourth, and they walked by, and it was like it was with anybody else. We started talking to them. It's like, oh, hey, come on inside, and we'll show you what we're doing.
And people would go into one another's house and
Mhm.
see what they were doing and talk about where they got this and where they got that and how to do whatever. And so it was just a feeling of
And that's-
excitement about
and
getting
that's-
your house done.
It's kind of how the garden club started. Was we got in the fall of, I think it was around September of 2004. There was a group of us that liked gardening, and so we decided to have a meeting. We had in our house on West 4th Street, and there was like 15 people that sat there, and we sat down and decided, what do we want to do and how we want it to be set up. And we said, there's going to be no membership fees, there's going to be no officers, because we had so many organizations, and we didn't want to see a power struggle. And so that's when we just sat down and said that, the basic rules are, you don't have to know anything about plants, if you like them, and everybody's going to be welcome. And when you get to the front door, we're not going to talk politics or anything else. We're not. It's not here for people to sell something. It's just for us to get together. We're going to show you our house. That was the original garden club. You always want to see somebody's house.
Yeah.
Let me see your house, and then we'll show me your yard, and then we can look at it. And maybe we'll have some ideas what you can do. And that was the big thing. And let's have some food and stuff like that. And then eventually we're going to get around and talk about plants. I mean, one of the fights that we did have was Dancy Terrace.
Yeah,
So
for people
Dancy
who don't
Terrace
know.
is the largest, we call that
Enclave.
enclave in the country. In fact, now people are building newer ones that look like Dancy Terrace, but
Tell where
it's
they are.
It's row houses.
Yeah.
they're row houses that were built for workers, I think,
Railroad.
in the 1920s, I believe, somewhere in there. And they had gone so it's at Main between 9th and 10th, right in there. And so they had fallen into disrepair, and they were owned by a slumlord that was out of Miami. And so it ended up that it came up for sale, and we were wanting to make sure that it went the right way. And there was a group of, and this was where we had the hit budding contest. It was pretty much everybody that was at SRG, like, just bulldoze them down. We don't care. The people had new houses, and that was where really that was a rough time. We worked through it, but Ling was one of the ones that stepped up and supported it. But we basically blocked them from being bulldozed down, and it took a lot of effort by a lot of people.
It was a big to do. We had the Guardian Angels come down from New York.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of them?
I have,
Yeah.
from New York.
Yeah.
To help?
To
To help
protect.
us,
Protect everyone.
Well,
It was
when
serious.
we went over there, we had a meeting where we're going to get together, and we're going to go over there right at dusk. All right. So we get over there, and there's a group of us, and it starts getting dark, and there was one of the local drug dealers. He pulls up in his Lincoln. He says, "Y'all white people, you might want to go home. It's getting dark, and we don't recommend you being over here." And I walked over to him. I said, "My name is Frank, and I live in the neighborhood. What's your name?" And so we're kind of going like this. The police were there, the guardian angels, and we had 3 Jim Greens that lived in the neighborhood. Gay Jim Green, black Jim Green, and Big Jim Green.
Big Jim Green.
Well, Big Jim Green was about 6'7", about 340 pounds. Just a really good guy. But called Jim up and said, "Hey Jim, what are you doing?" He goes, I'm watching wrestling, and we could really use your help down here." So he comes down there, and he shows up, and he comes with his overalls on, just a big guy,
Yeah.
you know, and he's got a beard, big guy. He's and he's there for about 5 or 10 minutes. He goes, "Well, I thought there was going to be some fight or something here. I could be home watching wrestling." And these guys are looking at him like, "I'm, really?" And so it was just funny, and it ended up, everything stayed peaceful and that kind of stuff. But it was a tense time where this was us showing, no, this is our neighborhood. We're taking this back. This is, we're not going to be pushed around by a bunch of drug dealers.
Yeah, there were some tense times from time to time, but
So, if you think for a second, what's something you'd like people to know about Springfield? Something important you think people should know about
We have to
Springfield?
keep it a secret now because the prices keep going up.
I don't want to keep it a secret.
For me, it's just I said everybody is pretty much welcome, and you got people here. Everybody will talk to anybody else. So for the most part, most people don't feel like they're better than somebody else. What you see is what you get.
Well, we've had so many people move in from other neighborhoods, really nice neighborhoods, and they've said, "We didn't have this in our neighborhood. We didn't really know our neighbors. We might have known their name. We never got together."
the front
y'all
porch
do.
thing is what I
Yeah.
think helps that a lot. The sitting on the front porches and talking to people as they go by, and that suburbia
Me-
doesn't have that
Yeah.
because they have the little bitty porches if they have a porch at all, and people don't sit on their porches. So
We've met a lot of people like that.
yeah,
We
So-
used to go, and in the house that we're in now on Hubbard, we used to go over to their house with y'all and sit on the porch with them, years before we bought the house. And I always loved the house, but never dreamed that, we would be there one day. But we'd sit on the porch, and people would drive by and blow and wave, all our friends and neighbors, and people would stop and join us, and it was just a lot of fun. So the porches do have a lot to do with it.
and the sense of community that
Mhm.
it's changed like from when we first came, and we had to fight for a lot of things because the neighborhood was in pretty bad condition back then. But we still have battles now, and to fight. We went to the city council to get the microbreweries, and there's things that you have to do to advance the neighborhood, and I just think that we all work together really well to do that.
Yeah.
I don't think people that live out in the suburbs, first of all, they probably don't have all of the things that we deal with that need to be fought for. I guess they have some issues and that they have to go to the city council for, but it seems like we have a lot more where we are.
But
And we work together to do it.
What's perfect anyway?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
Well-
perfect can be boring.
I think
that's true.
I think Crispy's was one of our biggest turning points. When
yeah.
he finally opened,
Mm-hmm.
it was so exciting to all of us.
So what we
Yeah.
thought would happen in 10 years is starting to happen right now. So we're not even. We thought we would be past this point.
We'd hear rumors that on the corner of 8th and Pearl, there was gonna be, was it Biscotti's? It was
Yeah, yeah.
We'd hear all these
Scotties and Starbucks and
way back. It's
Mhm.
like, no, they're not coming here yet.
not gonna happen.
But we dreamed about it, but of course
Yeah.
it didn't happen. But we're getting there now.
Well, that leads us to our last question then. So, what do you think of Springfield's future?
I think it's bright. You know, I'm just
Positive.
excited that
Mhm.
we are where we are, knowing what we came
I
from.
think we've gotten to the point to where, you know, we won't go back to what it was. We're only going to grow and grow
Keep
better.
going forward.
Very positive.
Mhm.